Hi, everyone. We're here to discuss vendor perspectives on football production. We have a great group of panelists. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. What I really like about this panel is we have LiveU, which can talk about the camera acquisition side. We have Wildmoka, which can talk about the automated highlights and production side, and then Pixellot, which can obviously talk about automated production, and then Native Waves to discuss distribution. So let's begin with LiveU. Ophir, I wanted to start with you. As far as football production and storytelling, what are you seeing as far as how your systems are being used around football matches around the globe?
Yeah, hi Ken, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate that. I think that traditionally when you look at, let's say, the involvement of LiveU within football, we started initially more in the news around the event, as we like to call it, with all the press conferences, bringing unique content to the viewers, doing a lot of fun engagement activities. And in the past 2 years, since the technology evolved from the cellular carrier side and also from our side, we see now that LiveU is being used also for the main feed of the actual matches. So again, I think that you can easily see LiveU being used for the fan engagement all the way to the main feed, to the actual feed of the game.
Excellent, great. So Ross, from the Pixellot perspective, automated production is, of course, growing in relevance, especially when it comes to second and third tier and even beyond football. What are you seeing as far as how your technologies are being used and the difference they're making?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for having me, Ken. I think what Pixellot is doing in the marketplace at the moment is providing not first tier sports, so quite rightly, like you said. So we know that the Premier League, the Champions League, and big events around the world are very much covered with full OB production. Where Pixellot is coming into the space is very much those secondary leagues. So whether that be the reserve leagues, the women's leagues, youth leagues, what Pixellot are doing is providing a full end-to-end package that enables these media owners to actually produce cost-effective production. So that's the kind of first bit I'd like to say. And the second part is that within that sort of paradigm, we're known for the full sort of camera hardware technology that is deployed within stadiums to live produce content. But actually the way that Pixellot pivoted over the course of the last year or two is providing various assets within the whistle-to-whistle. So for example, broadcast graphics, you can add commentary to your feed. We also provide different distribution components as well. So for example, we have our own OTT player, which enables you to monetize the content. You can also add advertising on the OTT as well. So there's loads of ways which we're finding with different customers that are basically taking up Pixellot all the time. And I think we can come on to it a little later in the presentation here, but around how different customers at the moment are using our services during the global pandemic.
Sure, excellent. So Cristian, from the Wildmoka perspective, obviously automated highlights is becoming more and more popular. I hear it all the time as far as, especially with social media, that demand to get content, taking one piece of content and then trying to deliver it to, 4 or 5 or 6 digital platforms at one time. What are you seeing as far as how soccer clubs and federations are using your technologies, and broadcasters, of course?
Yeah, so maybe a couple of words about ourselves first. It is true that automation is key in our workflow, our platform. We define ourselves as a digital media factory, which allows our customers to create all types of formats that they need in order to cover live events. Sports is very important to us, and we have a lot of customers around football. We also cover news and have a history around news events and so on. The automation piece is key for efficiency purposes, because the number of formats that our customers are creating and distributing to cover live events has exploded. Each different platform requires a different type of format. Talk about the very short form to the longer form, to vertical content, and so on, and even edited live content. So basically, in order to be able to produce that volume of content with the speed required to do this during live events, automation is key. But it's not the only factor in our platform. We find that most of our customers are keeping a human factor to capture the emotion and the storytelling. So we're providing the best mix of automation technologies to further speed and efficiency, and easy to use tools in order to add that layer of storytelling to capture and convey the emotion around the events.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, one of the cool things with all your technologies, if you take them together, is those second and third tier and fourth and fifth tier productions. In the past they would have two people who go out and do the show, right? And they would have to do the production of the game. But now you can layer in the Pixellot automated system to kind of capture the game, and then their team can capture, emotional content, if you will, close-ups and stuff, and then bring it all together. So it's really amazing how this content creation world is coming together. And Christof, I guess that gets to you as far as native waves and the distribution of this content. I mean, I know clubs are launching their own OTT channels. I'm sure there's some players out there who have their own channels or are getting close to launch their own channels. From the native waves perspective, what are you seeing out there as far as how football clubs and leagues and broadcasters are using your systems and technologies?
Yeah, definitely. So we are seeing a lot of cool content being created, and also like here on the panel, there are a lot of cool technologies. So what we are trying to do as Native Waves is how can we bring this together to one meaningful user experiences. So we want as Native Waves to redefine existing live media event experiences. So we are looking at them, what's currently existing, and then to think how we can bring them to the next level. And so we are creating solutions for broadcasters, but also sports leagues, to actually be able to handle all those content, all those multi-view contents together, different video feeds, audio feeds, and also data analytics, and then how they can deliver this also in perfect sync to the viewers, and so that the viewer then can watch this meaningful new user experience there. So, and also that without actually changing anything of the existing infrastructure, so still being able to integrate into existing broadcast workflows without disrupting them. And then also what this means for the end user, to add a lot of new level of personalization so that I really can define what I want to watch and can access all this different cool content.
Great, great. So Christof, I'm going to stick with you for the next question, which is about the next generation fan, right? So in our pre-calls for this event, with some top leading executives, the big question everybody has is, how do they reach these next generation fans, which let's call them fans that are under 23, right? So everybody over the age of 45 is really grappling with, how they want their stories told differently, what have you. So I'm going to go all around to all of you. So, but Christof, why don't you start as far as, how do you think, how do people under the age of 25, let's call them digital super natives, what do they really want out of a football content creation and distribution?
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the key factors is basically the choice. So the level of personalization that I can get, because what we're also seeing in different studies, everyone watches a bit differently. So people, some people are more interested in those video feeds, more people are then interested into the data analytics part. And it's then not that trivial to really create experiences that fit both of those needs. So what we are then trying to do to preserve this flexibility, and then to be able to select and put the content in the place where it actually then makes sense for the specific users. And then also what we see is basically they want to feel also more connected to their teams on a technology level, and not just teams, and obviously also player with all let's say the athletes following and so on, and also of course with the social media stuff and so on, to really be part of that. And then what we're also trying to do there is basically to also give these perspectives back to the end user. So if you think about a football game, and this is already captured by multiple camera angles in the stadium, but basically if you think about a broadcast experience nowadays, even if we look at then at web experiences and OTT, it's still the same single feed. So it's basically a one size fits all broadcast that everyone then gets. And I as user really can't see actually the perspective I maybe want to watch. So, and then also for football, like maybe I want to see the view from the goalkeeper, especially if you play football yourself. It's so different when you are on the field versus you see it in broadcast, and then be able to actually show the perspective and tell the stories you normally don't see in the broadcast. Also from the trainer's view or referee camera or the fan corner. So to really be part of the different stories all around a football game.
That's great. Yeah, one of the cool things that's happened a couple times here in the U.S. is ESPN for their big national college football championship game does a mega cast where there's like 16 channels of different content. And one of the cool things that they do is they take the tactical cameras, right, which are very wide shots, and they have coaches who sit there, ex-coaches or current coaches who watch it, and then you watch them watching the game, and then they analyze the plays. And it's fascinating because it's a whole level of insight that you don't have in the regular broadcast. So it's really cool to see how this is all going to kind of come together. So Ophir, from the LiveU, I mean, how do you, I know the cool thing that I've heard about LiveU and all the cellular camera systems is it's really great to be able to be deployed really quickly, without having to book satellite time, what have you. So if some player's arriving at an airport and you want to get a capture, you can just run out there and get the shots right then. So what do you see? How do you see your tools fitting into serving these next gen fans who are looking to get closer to players, closer to the coaches and everybody?
Yeah, I fully agree with you. It's a huge issue at the moment. I mean, it develops over the years. But I think that when you look at the next gen fans, you're talking about people that like to have a personalized content. They like to have a unique content. They want to have a story behind everything. They don't want just to watch a football match. As Christof said before, they want to understand what happens behind the scene. They want to have more information about what's going on. And this is where we can easily help the production team to get all this behind the scenes stuff. So, for example, in huge competition that I cannot mention the name, when we go to the finals, there was a LiveU unit on the bus of the finalists getting from the hotel to the stadium and being, and let you as a fan be part of the team, get a really personal feeling about it. How does it done? What happens there? And we really bring the fans close to the action. So we let the fans at home be part of the entire production. We have another solution which is called Stream Select, where you can actually select from which camera you want to watch the event, the game. We recently did kind of attach an Insta 360-degree camera to one of our units, so fans could actually go into that portal, look at the match from different angles, and really move that. So I think that's what the next generation fans looking for. It's really it's not one size fit all, as Christof said. It's about personalization.
Sure. So Ross, as far as the automated production, when when you kind of spin it out, the cool thing as far as this multiple feed world, I mean, I'm guessing. And I don't know if so I apologize. I don't know if you can do this yet, but multiple cutouts and being able to track multiple players and then take that and output it into the cloud or what have you. What do you see as the future of how automated productions technologies will help with those sort of efforts?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. Look, just firstly on personalization, I think it's a really interesting one. I spent the best part of 10 years in production. So I was actually producing content for a variety of different customers. And when I was doing it, 7-8 years ago now, it was very much a traditional way of doing it, of let's produce one piece of content and send it to many. And that sort of one-to-many paradigm, which has been used for many, many years, shifted, I think, probably sort of 4 to 5 years ago. And I think that what Christof said it really resonates, actually, is that actually now it's given consumers more choice. And I think that all of the technologies here that we can hear from can actually give fans more choice. And that's fundamentally whether you're 23 or younger, or whether you're slightly older, you want to have choice. You want to be able to choose which feeds you want to look at. Part of Pixellot's product set, actually, we have different views that you can see through our camera technology. So you can see our traditional AI automated generated feed, which follows the ball from left to right on the field. But simultaneously, we have a panoramic view. So actually, you can choose between your different sources. Now, the panoramic view is typically used by more from a coaching standpoint for player performance perspectives. But actually, what we're finding is that fans want to look at these different angles to see different parts of the field of play. And so, like I said at the start, actually, Pixellot, yes, we do look at the youth, women's and secondary tiered leagues and events, but actually, we go right down to grassroots level now. We have different cameras to suit different price points. So the Pixellot Air solution we've just released to market actually will allow you to do that. So if you have your son down at the local five-a-side pitch, we can allow you to do that. It's quite extraordinary, actually, that you can have a piece of technology which enables you to film and capture and record and look at your player performance in the actual game itself. So yeah, it's really interesting how, just to swing it back around again, of how things have changed since I began producing all those years ago.
Excellent, great. Well, Cristian, from your perspective from Wildmoka, what's your take as far as the next gen fans? And I guess the social media question I'll ask you is, it seems that a lot of people, they kind of have one team that does all the social media, right? But it's fascinating because if you take Facebook, for example, if you're at different ages, you probably want content to be a little different, right? Not necessarily the same way. I mean, trying to reach a 20-year-old versus a 55-year-old on Facebook should be a different experience. So what do you see as the opportunity as sort of people look to use your tools and really kind of even create within Twitter, for example, 3 versions of content or 4 versions of content that's much more personalized?
Yeah, well, I guess we now consider that Facebook is a platform for older people, right? The platforms for younger are TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and so on. And It's interesting to see that our customers are creating different storytelling, different narratives, in some cases, different stories for each of those platforms. And the first aspect, I think, is what we as older people call shoulder content, which little by little becomes the main content for younger generation because they need to connect with the athletes, or they need to connect with the stars and so on. When we look at, it's not football, but it's very similar. When we look at how some of our customers are covering events like Roland Garros, they are keeping the main match content for their own platform, cutting clips for Facebook and Twitter, single action clips, full game highlights for YouTube. But they're creating a lot of shoulder content for Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. So stories about athletes, stories about stars visiting Roland Garros and so on. And of course, to do so, they're using platforms like LiveU. So we receive a lot of content in our platform that comes either from the game, produced broadcast grade and so on, to create highlights and so on, or coming from lighter production facilities to create that mass of additional content for social or for OTT. So definitely the first aspect is targeting different audience with shoulder content. That's key for the younger generation. The second item, I think, is highlights and short form. It is not a new trend, but it's been amplifying lately. Highlights are becoming more and more strategic for our customers and for sports rights owners, sometimes being carved out as a specific rights package. I think that Variety International Intelligent Platform published a report last month saying that 50% of younger fans prefer watching highlights than entire game. So younger generation get bored easily watching an entire game and will turn to highlights a lot more. So having an efficient manner to produce those highlights is key. And maybe the third aspect, which is interesting and which is one that we are currently exploring and we have launched experience on, is vertical content, mobile viewing. So basically, whenever you watch content on your mobile phone, you don't turn your screen, you use it vertically. Of course, you would never watch an entire football game vertically. It doesn't make any sense. But when it comes to push notification for key actions, you won't turn your phone. So what we have launched with Free, which is one of the main French telco operators, they have acquired all rights for French Ligue 1. They are providing a personalized push notification service. Whenever there is an action happening in one of the teams that you follow, you click on the notification and you see the video full screen instead of seeing a small 16:9 in the center of the screen. We still see the 16:9 up top, and below we generate with machine learning a square zoom following the action. And since the video is playing in loop, you find yourself actually seeing that again and again and focusing on all the different details of the action. So basically, the variety of types of content that you need to produce in order to reach that younger generation requires, of course, new workflows, new ways to capture content, new ways to produce content, and to distribute it as well.
Right, excellent. That's a lot of stuff to think about there.
Yes.
So I do like to think that social media, for if you're 12, let's face it, if you're 11 or 12, social media platforms are now like growing up. When we were growing up, rock and roll bands or favorite musical artists. If your older brother or sister liked them, you didn't like them because they, and your parents were there, forget about it. You ain't gonna go and, so it's cool to see how youngsters are looking to social media platforms to find their own place, right? A safe zone without their parents being in the room. So
yes, of course, yes.
So,
And they are looking to find different content or different experience on each of those social platforms. So
Right.
this is why you need to personalize. It's actually targeting different ranges of audiences depending on which platform you target. And if you want to reach everybody, then you of course need to produce a higher volume of content.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask that question just for everybody here. Clearly, higher volume of content seems to be the thing that's going to happen. I'm amazed, however, this pandemic, we didn't see 3-camera shows, right? Everything kind of got bigger. Even though people couldn't working in totally new ways, there was more content being generated. So, Ophir, from your perspective, for all of you, do you think that the amount of content created around football matches is just going to continue to grow and grow and grow?
I'm not so sure about it. I think that what we will see now is kind of standardized way how things are settling down and getting into a certain normal. So, I mean, I'm freelancing for UEFA. I'm organizing Champions League matches for UEFA, etc. And I see a 32 camera production in a quarterfinal and this kind of stuff, but I don't think that it can become a standard because it's so expensive to do it. It's such a resources demanding, and at the moment with the pandemic, a lot of sports organizations lost a lot of money, a lot of revenue, and now they have to find a way how to create the content in a more cost-effective way. So I think that what we will see more it's more going forward, remote production, multi-camera remote production, finding ways to balance in between cost cutting and also bringing a lot of content, good content from different angles. So it's kind of finding this balance.
Right. Ross, what's your take as far as just the explosion of content around?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the one thing that I've really sort of thought about in the last year since the global pandemic hit is that everyone was forced to think differently about how they can produce content moving forward. And I think that was very much accelerated since in terms of the way that various media owners, federations, clubs will look at the way that they can produce content. I mean, if you rewind to lockdown 1 here this time last year, a lot of sports completely stopped, as we know. And then when it did come back, a lot of people that were producing content weren't actually allowed into the stadium. So therefore, Pixellot solutions and services become really prominent to various different federations and media owners across the world. And so we saw a massive growth in that period where actually they came to us, clubs, federations, and different people to say, look, we need to produce content. Can you install one of our Pixellot camera hardware systems and enable us to produce content automatically? Yes, you can access your mobile phone, the Pixellot mobile app, and you can add in your various assets on top, such as wipes, replays, etc. But yeah, we've very much noticed an acceleration in terms of the way that the different people look at these things. And I think that the main thing coming out, we hope, coming out of the pandemic, there is kind of a shift, like you say, around budget cuts. There's a lot of reduction in terms of production costs and stuff, so on and so forth. But the other thing as well, which is quite an interesting one here in the UK, and I think it's reverberated across the world, is reducing carbon emissions with travel. So I think that's quite an important one to kind of throw in there. I think a lot of the broadcasters here in the UK, BT Sports, Sky Sports, have made a commitment to reduce carbon emissions, and that means putting less people in cars and aeroplanes and trains to produce content. And so I think with all of our sort of technologies we're speaking about today, there will be more use cases for them, because actually reducing carbon emissions is hugely important for the world.
Yeah, that's a good point. Christof, from Cristian mentioned, as far as the again, explosion of content creation, and as far as OTT and also the fact that people want to watch highlights, they don't want to watch the game anymore. How does somebody approach an OTT service to make sure that they are obviously are not, like one of the challenges I find is sometimes there's just too much content because it almost becomes we're so cost effective now as far as editing technologies and what have you, that you can just give too much to the fans and to whoever. So how do you think an OTT strategy can be effective and not deliver too much content, for example, and kind of get them to go where you want them to go?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that is not as much considered as it should be, we think, is basically the end user experience. So if you think about multi-camera, then a lot of OTT services, what they do, they did some approaches where they just throw out different channels there, and then you had multiple angles and so on. But there was not really a connection between those to rethink it from a user journey, right? So what does the user want to see and when he wants to see it? And that also comes to play when you think about highlights, because especially football, there are so many moments that I just want to replay and then maybe also analyze from different angles, right? So when I watch a football game in broadcast, I always have the feeling, oh, I want to see, was it really a foul, right? So I want to go in there now and analyze and maybe see it from different shots, and then to just say, okay, and make my personal decision based on it. So, and I think there is, it's great that more and more content now is coming in. Also that is provided by the leagues because it's captured, and of course there's some cost cutting, but still there's so much content that is actually not being used. And this is also something what we are trying to do with Native Face, to say first, okay, let's just take the content, what you already have, and then think about what this means for the user, and then provide this multiple camera angles that you can choose, maybe hide some of them, because it's not really meaningful for a user to see the same situation, just like from very different degrees angles, but to see it from really different perspective where it's meaningful to you and where it tells a different story. And then also connected with data and with audio. And then once that is done, is basically then also to turn around and go back to production. Once you see, okay, this content is being used, to also change the way how and which streams foremost are produced, that's then being shown to the user. Because at the moment, there's still not, like, there's no distribution out there that can give you this experience. And this is basically what we want to change. We want to give also for production a way of distribution to actually bring this cool content then to the end viewer.
Sure. I guess that's a classic question. If you ask somebody why they're doing something and they say just because they can, doesn't mean you should, right? I mean, that's the, so okay. Final topic. The buzzy two, well, it's a number in the letter, 5G. Let's just kind of discuss this from all your perspectives, how 5G may impact the way your technologies are deployed. Ophir, I got to start with you, obviously, LiveU. What's your take on 5G? A lot of hype and buzz around it. We've seen it talk about the 360 cameras being used with 5G. What's your take on 5G?
I think that, let's say up until like 6 or 8 months ago, I would say that it's completely just a buzzwords, a 5G, and everybody like, yeah, 5G is coming, wow, amazing, but nobody really knew what to do with that. And what we see recently, I mean, take for example, like only I think 4 months ago, we did a POC, proof of concept, with the Sky Sports Germany, doing a second Bundesliga match completely over 5G. It was done completely over 5G. Everything was done on a 5G network, completely, because the area was quite crowded, and we got what we call the network slicing. So the way we see it is like moving from a motorway of 2 lanes to motorway with 5 lanes. And suddenly you get not just the video quality getting much better, but then you can actually transmit and stream much more than that. It's about data, it's about audio, it's about a return feed coming back and forth, and much more interaction can be done. So I see 5G as a key for broadcasting. I think that it will evolve, and especially around football, because most of the carriers, most of the cellular carriers, when they want to test their 5G network, they normally go to a football stadium somehow, and they call us. But eventually, it's really about bringing that to sports and enhancing the production level. So I definitely see that as a key thing for us moving forward.
So Ross, from the Pixellot perspective, I'm guessing 5G could be a real helping hand, because a lot of these events are not in the exactly fibered up stadiums and fields and pitches.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it gives us more opportunities to work with different partners all around the world. One thing I would say, we launched in Ireland recently, in the League of Ireland, across all the leagues there, across the Championship, the Women's League and Youth Leagues. And we actually provide low latency streaming sub 4 seconds for betting use for those leagues. Simultaneously with the same feed, we also provide a media stream for OTT use, which the clubs then can monetize thereafter. They can add their own pre-roll, etc., and branding and so on and so forth across it. But the one interesting thing is a lot of clubs there, like you say, the bandwidth and the internet connections aren't great, but some of them actually are using 4G routers at the moment, and actually they're getting perfect streams that are coming directly from the source from the stadium. But I think, like you said, as 5G comes in, I think it just opens up a whole new opportunity, right? It enables us to produce a higher quality of streaming content. It enables us to add different assets onto the stream and make it more robust. So, look, I think it's hugely exciting.
Excellent. Well, Cristian, I guess that's good news from your perspective as well, right? There's more stuff coming through and getting stuff out.
Of course. And by the way, I guess today, most of our customers are tier 1 broadcasters or leagues. Most of the time, it is true that they have local facilities, whether it's a studio or an on-premise, on-stadium facility to produce content or to produce one live feed out of what's happening locally, just because usually the scarcest resource is bandwidth on this kind of setup. So a fully remote cloud production, where it has been, let's say, mainstream for lower tier events in the past 2-3 years, was not yet or is not yet mainstream for tier 1 events. And the impact of 5G for me is that it finally will enable whatever event to bring all the content to the cloud or to a studio, which actually allows remote production either from the cloud with a platform like ours, or from the studio, which is remote compared to the stadium. So definitely, I think that it's a huge change. What I think it will also bring, which is great, is professional, let's say, high-crafted live production for lower tier events, which is great because, of course, it will give more visibility to a lot of what we call today lower tier events. Maybe on the side of 5G, I wanted to bounce back on the OTT question that we discussed a little bit earlier. I think that we're slowly coming out of a world which was, let's say, limited by the linear, let's say, limitations and strategies. And of course, when you are limited with linear, you have to craft one piece of content for millions of people. What OTT is bringing, which is key, is the capability to address every single niche. So producing thousands of pieces of content for thousands of people. And this is the main difference between the old world of linear distribution of content and the OTT, which really brings the on-demand era. Of course, this brings the challenge of discoverability of the content, but this is where social media and, of course, user experience bring a lot in terms of bringing up content that the user wants to consume.
Right, and that's perfect, Christof, because you got the closing word here. So 5G, OTT, what do you see as that mix and that marriage?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I can only agree to especially the production aspects of it. I think there are two sides. It's the production, but also what it adds to distribution, right? So on the production, I can fully agree more content is better in a way, and then like to really create the user experience out of it. But just to be able to drop in cameras at specific location, you don't need all the setup that you normally have, and then be able to also do new cameras that are moving around a specific space instead of static cameras that also add a lot of dynamic to the content you can produce. But then also on the distribution side, especially what we are looking at is to just have one production workflow where you can create this multi-view experience for at-home use. But then also when you visit this on-site, when you visit the venue, then you get the full experience also there, because suddenly you can also distribute that content very fast on the venue just with the distant mobile distribution route. and suddenly you can also reach a full-scale stadium and the viewers there. So you can do the replays, you can select different cameras, especially if you're sitting a bit farther away and so on. And then you can also capture the key moments of a specific game. So I think it's really a new level of what you can create. So actually they're quite exciting to how this is moving forward.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's going to be an amazing time. Thanks for your time, by the way, today. Really appreciate it. And see you out there soon.